Okay, good evening. I'm very glad that the air conditioning is working down in here. I walked down here through the park and everybody's running around in, topless pretty much, and I was sweltering in a suit, so I was definitely suffering. So hopefully you can all hear me at the back. I'm a terrible sort of prowler, so I do apologise for that. And if I'm looking funny, it's because I've got new glasses, and they're varifocal ones, so I'm not quite used to them yet because I've only had them for a week. So I will apologise. But the title of this talk is Change is Coming. And yes, I work for Airbus, and just in case you don't know, we make commercial aeroplanes, okay, or the bit that I do. And the reason I say that is because somebody once asked me, where do you work? And I went, I work at Airbus. And he goes, oh, you drive the bus to the airport. No. So unless, I think I'm better without them, unless you've had your head buried down a very deep hole, you've been on a very remote Scottish island, you've got no Wi-Fi, you're not going to escape that there are a number of dramatic changes happening in the world. I've put Brexit top of the list. It's the one that worries me the most at the moment. There's a lot of terrorism going on. We've had some horrible events recently, both in the UK and in France and in other areas. We've got conflicts going on around the world. We've got ungoverned spaces, which seems to be the latest buzzword between the governments. We've got elections. We've had elections in France. We've got elections going on in France. We've just had an election here. We might be having another one. We've got elections in Germany coming up. There are elections going on, and all of this causes uncertainty. We've had a rise in popularism, we've had a rise in nationalism and a rise in protectionism. All of these things will have an effect, both to my company, Airbus, but it will also have an effect to the UK, and it will also have a knock-on effect to Europe and to the rest of the globe. All of these things will affect us in some shape or form. So, there is a storm coming, and hopefully you can see the man in Canada, I've forgotten Alberta, that was it, the man mowing his lawn. So, there is a definite storm brewing on the horizon. So do we, A, carry on regardless? This guy didn't touch him. Do we, B, panic? Or do we, C, start to plan and prepare for the future? Well, I'm a bit of a sad geek, and I like to plan and prepare. So, I quite like the analogy with sailing. I don't know whether any of you do sail. It's quite a nice activity. I have sailed in the past, but never anything as big as this. But when you're sailing, it's very important to both watch and read the weather forecasts. And when I say read the weather forecasts, we'll all remember back to 1987 and Michael Fish. No, there's not going to be a hurricane. I remember that hurricane because I was in a tent. And I remember it very well because the tent was half the size. I was in a festival with 100,000 other people, and about 2/3 of their tents disappeared. Mine, fortunately, stayed upright because we did put out the storm, guys. You need to assess the current environment, okay? You need to be aware of what's happening around you. So I'm hoping you can see the analogies with all of your different businesses, because you need to know what's happening today. Because there's no point in dealing with tomorrow if you're sunk today. So you've got to assess the current environment and measure what are the prevailing conditions so that you know what is happening to you. You know what's going to be or what's coming. Is the wind getting stronger? Is the wind getting less? Are the waves getting bigger? Are the waves getting less? All of these will give you indications about what the future might or might not hold. That way, we can then anticipate and we can start to plan both best and worst case. And I'm a real saddie because I do like to plan for worst case. And that way, as an optimist, everything always appears brighter than you originally planned it to be. So that, I'm afraid, is what I do tend to do. And then it's important that we react appropriately to the conditions before or as they change. You don't want to be trying to reef the sails and batten down the hatches when you've got a 40, 50-foot wave about to come over the top of your boat. You don't want to be in that situation. So you've got to make sure that you plan right. You don't want to do things too early, but you definitely don't want to do them too late. So I'm hoping we're sort of introducing some ideas here. So from an Airbus perspective, Not one of us has a crystal ball. I can tell you now, if I had a crystal ball, I would not be here. I would be sitting on some nice sunny island, sunning myself, sailing, kite surfing, kayaking, doing all the things that I enjoy. But unfortunately, I haven't won the lottery, so I'm here. But that's okay, because actually this is quite a nice event, so I'm very pleased to have been invited to come, because it's a bit of a coup for me, that's for sure. But not one of us has a crystal ball. Within Airbus, we have teams who are dedicated to planning and preparing. We have a team that is dedicated to Brexit. Like I say, it is very, very worrying to both me, but also to Airbus as a company. We have teams of people looking after supplier management. We have teams of people looking after risk, because risk is the operative word. Anybody want to hazard a guess how much our cheapest product costs list price? Rough guess.
80 million euros.
80 million euros. Anybody else? I'll give you a clue. It's $110 million. That's our cheapest product. And by the way, we make 2 every single day. Therefore, if we've not got any bits, you can imagine what that means to my cash flow pretty damn quickly. Okay. So part of our preparation is supplier mapping. And I think that's partly why I've been invited here today, but I am actually a big, big fan of the Boxar tool, albeit I am a basic user. We started mapping our supply chain back in 2013. We have now got over 7,000 suppliers into the map. We are down to tier 6, and we've got a few at tier 7. That's how much work we have put into this, okay? We know what moves where around the world. And so Colin was talking about air miles. Look at how far all our bits travel. Would you set up a business that way again? No way would you do it that way. But that's what we are with. That is the legacy of what we do and the nature of our company. And long may it continue, because it creates work for me, so that's good. So not only do we know what moves where and for which program, but we can drill down to individual suppliers, and we can see what's coming into them, where it's coming from. We can basically chop and change this to suit ourselves in any way which we like. That's the power that we have from this tool. And what we discover is that the aerospace supply chain, it is not a supply chain. We all talk about supply chains. It is not a chain. It doesn't go simply from part A to part B to part C. It is a really complex interwoven web. I know tier 1 suppliers who are tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, and tier 5. That's how we are interwoven. We are interwoven with Boeing. Unfortunately, we're in the Boeing room tonight, so we'll be having a word with you later. But, you know, needs must, and the aircon's working, so that's okay. I'm happy. But what the supplier mapping allows us to do is it allows us to look and assess risk, regardless of where it comes from. So take Thailand, for instance, really nice example of geopolitical risk. Somebody was talking earlier on about natural disasters. So the hurricane that went through the Caribbean last year, we were able to inform both that company, we were able to inform its upstream and its downstream suppliers that parts might be affected, so that we could start to plan to make sure that we mitigated the effects of those. These are the kind of things that we can do. And I bet actually Pierre probably hasn't got this one in his map, and I've not checked, so I don't know. But from a geographical point of view, where do you think the most risky company is on the globe? Any takers? Come on. Oh, you're a difficult audience, aren't you? Okay, no, it is on the Pakistan-Afghan border in the Badlands, okay? And that's where the quarry is that makes the yellow onyx for the A380 bar top for the Emirates. Okay, and it's the only quarry in the world that produces the specific yellow of all the things that you want. But what we have is knowledge and data, and that allows us to make informed and fact-based decisions. hallelujah, we are partly towards having a crystal ball. It allows us to decrease the risk to our production systems. Like I say, we're making 2 single aisles every single day. Last year, we made 688 aeroplanes. This year, it's going to be over 700, and I'm going into my last slide, so I'm going to shut up now. But it also allows us to identify nodes of importance. What do I mean by nodes of importance? We have suppliers at Tier 2 that deliver to 70, 80, 90 Tier 1s, do not deliver to us at all. And for those of you who remember Porter and his 5 forces, we have 0 power at all. Therefore, these companies are crucial that we know who they are and that we start to target them specifically for development. Really, really important. So how many people have we got working on this? Well, the reality is it's a very, very small team. You can see I've put up my friend and colleague Pierre. He would have been here tonight. Unfortunately, his son's just had an exam today, so I can sort of understand why he didn't really want to come from Toulouse all the way here to come to present to us guys. He's got about 2 or 3 people working for him. That's it. He has done all of this pretty much with those 2 or 3 people. And obviously we have worked, and here's the plug here, very closely with Boxar, who have been fantastic. We have worked really, really closely with them, and it's been a really good relationship. So who am I, and what do I actually use supplier mapping for? Well, my official title is Senior Supplier Development Manager. I think senior just means old, because I certainly didn't get any more money when they promoted me to senior. But what do I actually do? It's a very grand title. I am part of the Airbus Global Troubleshooting Network. Okay, we are the people that when there's a problem at the suppliers, we get fired in to go and sort it out. That's what I do. That's my day job. And it's really great fun. But the trouble is we talk about development, and the reality is we're fighting fires. We're not really supplier development people. We are just firefighters with a very grand title. But the point with using the Boxar tool is it's allowed us to be a bit more proactive. As I said before, we can now identify who we think actually might be a really good target for development further down the supply chain, people that might be causing a problem or may cause problems in the future, i.e. we're starting to look at the prevailing conditions, we're starting to read the weather forecast, we're starting to look at what we could do. And with those companies, we're now starting to direct the supplier development, and we are starting to utilize, some of you may have heard of SC21, some of you may have heard of sharing in growth. Some of you may have even heard of the forthcoming supply chain competitiveness and growth, or national manufacturing competitiveness levels, as it will also be known. But it allows us to target those development programs into those businesses and to go and specifically say, look, guys, we need you to come and do this. We need you to take on supplier development. That is what we are getting. Because we are now using facts and knowledge and information to make decisions. So why? Why the hell should we bother? Well, it's fairly simple. Aviation drives our economy. And if you don't believe that, just remember when the the volcanic cloud from Iceland came across the country, and look at how much disruption that actually caused. I was very lucky because I was one of the last planes to land back in the UK before the whole airspace across Europe was shut down. So air traffic has doubled twice in the last 30 years. So every 15 years it has doubled. We are anticipating it will double again. And we're basing that on hard data again. We're basing it on population growth. And talking about population, there was 3.6 billion passengers. That is equivalent to half of the global population flew in 2016. That's an awful lot of passengers. 51.2 million tons of freight. You all like to have your nice fresh exotic fruit and vegetables. It all gets flown here. $2.7 trillion to the global GDP. I wish I had a few of those because I'll be quite happy. And 62.7 million jobs supported around the country. Sorry, it'd be great if it was around the country, around the globe. So Theresa May would be very happy if it was around the country, wouldn't she? From an Airbus perspective, and when I'm talking about Airbus, it's very complicated Airbus, because I work for Airbus, but I work for Airbus. And here I'm talking about Airbus Group, which is aircraft, it's defence and space, and it's helicopters. 134,000 people employed. A €1 trillion, make sure I get the right currency, €1 trillion order book, which we've got. That's not bad. That's quite nice to have. From a commercial point of view, from a commercial aircraft point of view, 54,000 employees. And it's worth noting that we generate most of the revenue with a lot less staff. So we've got about a third of the staff and generate 2/3 of the revenues. But the key figures that I want to take off this is we have a backlog. This is orders with our company of just under 10 years worth of backlog. That's a very nice position to be in from our point of view. However, you think from an airline perspective, from our 400 customers, that's not a very nice position. Can you imagine going in to buy a new car and being told, yeah, of course, you can have that. By the way, it'll be 10 years. Oh, and by the way, we want a very nice, hefty deposit, and it's not returnable. So it's a very nice business from our point of view, which is why we're quite cash rich and why we have our own little bank. So that's why it's important to us. But ultimately, what does Boxar do? You'd be glad to hear this is the last slide, because I've probably gone well over my time. I normally do. Boxar allows us and helps us to meet that market demand. It's important that we do. If not, competition will come in. We've got competition now from the Russians. We've got competition from the Chinese. We've got competitions from the South Americans. You know, ultimately, Airbus and Boeing rather like their cushy little arrangement. It suited us. We don't really want new players into the market because they will upset things, and we don't really want that. So we've got to be sure that we are better than they are. So it helps us to better meet our customers' requirements. It helps us to meet our customers' deliveries. It helps us to meet our production ramp-ups, and we are continuing to ramp up. Like I say, it was 688 last year. It will be over 700. I've not got the final figure for this year yet, but there will be over 700 deliveries this year. I have no doubts about it whatsoever. Ultimately, Boxar is helping us to be proactive. So thank you very much.